I think it's more just an attention grabber. Like, you can't reduce something as large as the American Revolution into this, that, or the other for all posterity just because of where things led. I mean, if that's the case, then every single revolution in the history of humankind is a counter-revolution. If it, based on where it ultimately, I mean, maybe except for Cuba. But
well, even now they're making we're watching significant market reforms being implemented and kowtowing to U.S. imperial, threats of crushing the regime and everything. So, like, even that. No, I mean,
Cuba's just doing dangism, dude.
Yeah, they are. But I mean, like,
at the end of the sword.
You could argue that all revolutions are counter revolutions, unless and until we arrive at full communism.
Yeah.
So intent doesn't matter. Class composition doesn't matter. Actual radical potential at the time doesn't matter. Only results after the revolution's been, matured and established a state that exists for 100 years or so, can we tell whether or not it was a real revolution and not just a counter-revolution?
Right.
Yeah. And so thus far, they haven't happened. Not a one.
No revolutions have ever happened. The bourgeois revolutions, not revolutions, because the bourgeoisie took power, and that's not revolutionary.
There's that.
That was my feeling from that Horn article. It was just like, what are you talking about, man? Yeah, like they did some reactionary shit because they're the bourgeoisie. Like, it wasn't a communist revolution. What are you talking about?
Yeah, but the very fact that the kind of reaction occurred means that there was something for them to react to, which points to another faction in the revolution that had to be either quelled or repressed. So it just doesn't make sense. I mean, you can argue that discrete act was counter-revolutionary. You can't argue that the entirety of the American Revolution is counter-revolutionary. But
you can't argue that well. You can argue it, but it's just not going to make any sense.
I mean, I was recalling this kind of logic. It's not exactly the same, but it kind of mirrors, in a certain sense, the sort of anarchist maxim. I'm recalling like a Mexican revolutionary maxim that was ultra-left, that was every revolution devolves into a state. And so if that's the framework, then yes. And it's also like a weird inverse of like the ends justify the means, except there are never any ends. So it's heretofore that could have justified any means.
Hello, and welcome to the 250th anniversary of the founding of the United States, and the special episode that we're doing to talk about that shit on the regrettable century.
Yes. I'm proud to be an American.
Well, I was,
but not anymore.
Not anymore.
It's okay.
I'm fine with being an American.
I'm all right with being an American.
Well, at least I know. At least I'm not fucking in South Sudan or Gaza or something right now.
Right.
Yeah. God.
Dealing with the damage dealt out by America's allies.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, so we have got a complicated subject on our hands, and that is the nature of the American Revolution. Right. And I'm calling it the American Revolution because America, the United States of America, is the only country in the Americas that has the word America in its name. So I think it's fine if we refer to the United States as America.
Yeah.
Right? Isn't that to me has always been such a fucking nitpicky bullshit, fake radical thing to like take issue with. America, don't you mean the United States. I was like, well, there are other countries called the United States, but there's only one country in the Americas that has the word America in its name, and that would be the United States of America. Mexico is the United States of Mexico. You know, so don't you mean the United States when you say Mexico? No, I mean Mexico. It's in the name. We just call it that. That's fine. Moving on.
I don't know. I think a lot of the left is full of people who are just looking for things to be offended about, especially like if they can language police stuff. And it's just like,
dude, that's their favorite shit.
It's just
what
people call it.
It's a super ironic thing to like reclaim, like the name of cartographer who was part of the colonial venture to take over the hemisphere. Yeah. It's like, that's ours too down here, so don't forget it.
Yeah, and there's literally no other nation in the Western Hemisphere that like claims themselves as Americans, and we do. So I think it's fine. Everyone knows what you're talking about.
So the only correct position is to call it Turtle Island.
Oh, that's right.
Decolonize your mind, man.
Yeah, I don't think I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to just leave it colonized.
Well, there's also the precedent of America being exclusively a negative epithet. You know, Yankee American, the ugly American, like it's kind of like, okay, I guess there's room for all kinds of discursive maneuvers, but
well, I mean, also like a lot of people in in radicals in Latin America refer to Americans as North Americans,
right?
Norte Americanos, right? Which includes like Guatemala, Costa Rica, Mexico,
Canada,
all of the Central American countries, and Canada as well.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I guess really the only thing you can do is just not use any language. That's the most radical thing to do. No language. Anyway, so
how would we do a podcast? How would we do this if we were to? I guess.
Well, we wouldn't because
doing a podcast is reactionary.
Oh, okay.
That's true.
Cool.
It is. Wow. Okay, so anyway, so we're talking about the United States of America because it is the 250th anniversary of the founding of the United States of America, and on July 4th, 1776. It's actually the founding. It's the 250th anniversary of the announcing of the founding, because I guess the actual founding was July 2nd, right? Is that when it was? That's when the Declaration of Independence was voted on and signed, and then they announced it a couple days later in Philadelphia.
I think something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Talking about being nitpicky, right? But anyway, so so we've got a very complex and often contradictory experiment that has been unfolding for the past 250 years here in the United States. And it is the common practice of many of us on the left, except for like the official communism of that came out of the tradition established by the Soviet Union. So, the CPUSA and then a couple of the earlier Trotskyist offshoots of the CPUSA held to the traditional Marxist view of the American Revolution, that it was a bourgeois revolution and it was unfinished and then finally finished during the Civil War. And that because it was part of this round of bourgeois revolutions, it had revolutionary potential. And then, of course, there's the newer sort of post-New Left view of the American Revolution, that it was a reactionary revolt by, rich slave and landowners and merchants in order to not have to pay taxes. And I got to say that it can be both because, that's the way the world works.
It always is.
Yeah, it always is. Right. And I think that one of the things that's missed in all of this are the elements that make up the revolution and how there were many, many, many germs within the in the American Revolution that had the potential to turn things into something else. And that we are here to discuss those germs, I think, and to discuss how the legacy of the American Revolution wasn't wholly negative and is something that I think can be motivating today. I think that's what we're here to discuss. You guys can just feel free to disagree with me, but that's what I gathered from all the shit that I read.
Yeah, I do. I think I agree. I believe that is what we're here to discuss. And also, I think it's especially difficult right now to think about, this experience of America, of being American, or of being subject to America this year in particular, because it's this 250th birthday. And so we're building what is it, MMA, whatever, set to have a big kind of showy kind of spectacle on the White House lawn.
Yeah, man, that
already
shit is
happen?
crazy. Yeah,
That might have already happened.
It did. That is crazy, man.
Yeah.
That is surreal.
That's like a Simpsons joke.
It
You
is.
know?
No, it's like
Seriously, like
Back to the
everything about
Future
this
2.
administration.
Yeah, exactly. Like when Biff takes over Hill Valley, that's the kind of shit that would be happening. Yeah.
It's
Or it's the kind of like snobby kind of dickheaded joke that Jon Stewart might make about like if the stupid hillbillies took over the White House,
Yeah.
Like, well,
Yeah.
It's a double down. Yeah. It's like, yeah, and you're gonna, we're gonna do it. You can all go fuck yourselves.
and the funniest thing about that is that this pampered soft boy billionaire that was never once like moved a muscle to threaten anyone. Oh, actually, he probably smacked his kids around, I bet. But I mean, he's never been in a fight in his life. He's of course not privy to that sort of entertainment, being raised as a millionaire's son in New York City in his gilded apartment, his gilded high-rise apartment. I mean, like, so it's very weird that Trump is associating himself like willfully with these elements. But I guess it makes sense for him as a showman, him as a reality TV star, him as like a manipulator of public opinion. I guess it all does make sense. But the weird thing about it is that people buy it, right, as authentic somehow, right?
Well,
truly bizarre.
He's the product of a kind of viewership, He's been this mainstay in the public imaginary, and I think he's very. That's like his genius, his intelligence is like being locked into what the public's imagination of
what the
is.
chuds want, man.
Yeah.
He knows what the chuds want to hear.
And I think he does revel in being liked in that way. So he's willing to like adopt. And I also think he just likes basic stuff like McDonald's. I think he's kind of a basic guy.
Right. He wants things that are uncomplicated and just like plain and straightforward, and not pretending to be something other than what they are.
Right.
Easy to grasp. Yeah. Shit. I was gonna say something, but this is all very far afield. Anyway, maybe we should just
dive in.
Yeah. What was I gonna say? Oh, yeah. I mean, like, honestly, if all of that crazy shit were happening under like some kind of like populist leftist leader, it would be so exhilarating. I would be so happy at the pearl clutching, effete, elites, who would be so upset by all of this kind of stuff. Like, he loves McDonald's and has an MMA fight on the White House lawn. It's like defiling of all that is sacred to them, And God, that would just be like, it would be so gratifying.
Like I used to say that that's the only good thing about Trump is him making a mockery of the presidency,
Yeah.
But exactly. Now I have a hard time even thinking that's a good thing because of all of the collateral damage he's doing to the entire world and all of the innocent people that are being killed while he desecrates the highest office in the land.
Yeah, exactly.
Behind every sick burn are 1,000 deaths.
Yeah. 1,000 children trapped under rubble.
Yeah.
All right, Jason, why don't you lead us in this episode?
Yeah, okay.
You're the one who has definitely thought the most about this.
Yeah,
you kept messaging the group chat about this shit while I was like, all throughout the week, taking care of like screaming toddler and everything else, being like,
actually,
that seems cool.
Actually, before you lead us, great leader, I had some thoughts that about the sort of new left revisionism Chris was referencing, with regard to like this one-sidedness that I think Gerald Horne sort of reflects from a scholarly position. That that itself is only possible because of the successes that that it's criticizing. There's like
Yeah,
a very
right.
dialectical flow through history, and I do think the new left is bringing focus to things that need to be looked at, just not in such a flat, one-sided way.
Yeah.
But it's also true that the sort of CPUSA, they were trying to reappropriate patriotism toward mass class politics, which is very interesting, and I think worth talking about.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting, and it's funny because that is like the cardinal sin. That's like the worst thing that the CP tradition is responsible for in the minds of most people today. I mean, most people on the left, people who call themselves socialist, they say, "Well, yeah, but there's a radical tradition in America. There's a revolutionary tradition, but we're not like Browderites, like we're not. We eschew all of the thinking and the posturing of the Communist Party during the period of their largest size and influence. That's what we're
Yeah.
not for.
We don't want that shit.
Yeah,
We like it. The kind of communism I'm for is like the really cool kind where only like 5 people at a time can ever get together and agree on it. That's my
and
shit.
one of those people has to go. Honestly,
Yeah. One of those people is a revisionist or a wrecker or something and has to go and found their own group of 5 people.
okay, yeah, and like obviously there's such a thing as being like too ham-fisted, too vulgar, and just kind of uncritically utilizing patriotic imagery and whatnot. But to just eschew like the whole of the revolutionary message and legacy is just, I think, making a mistake in the opposite direction.
The most interesting moment for me, for with regard to this fusion of sort of the American revolutionary tradition and this sort of Soviet-centric historiography, is during the Second World War. And you have all of these amazing Hollywood films that are depicting the Allies, and there's all of these sort of ideological grafting going on between like human liberation, in the West and in the East, and I find that all super profound.
And they're all slightly subversive too. They've all got like a little bit of a class analysis thrown in, just kind of flavoring it. And that's the stuff that drove McCarthyites crazy in the 1950s is the fact that the commies that wrote all this shit and slipped it into the movies did so to such beloved movies. Like, I mean, I guess probably the most prominent of those movies would be It's a Wonderful Life, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
And they embed these things you're talking about in like things that are so naturalized. The rights of man, the rights of, like the hollowed liberal ethos. They just flesh them out more with more concrete iterations. So anyway,
we're more you than you are.
Exactly.
Well, and if you can imagine what it took to elevate the Communist Party to that level of preeminence in terms of the influence on the American political discourse generally. It takes both the existence of the Soviet Union and the massively, at least the rising power of the labor movement. It also takes the history of revolution in this country that they could, not like appropriate, but like to grapple with and to like proudly own. And also it took a very, let's call it, populist ethos about being able to talk about things in broad terms even while also thinking about things and doing things in much more specific terms as well. Like you couldn't imagine the I'm trying to remember his name. Who is the Communist Party leader before Earl Browder?
William Z. Foster?
Yeah, you couldn't imagine, or at least
Zebulon.
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine old Zebulon.
Old Zebby.
Yeah,
William Zebulon Foster is his name, Kevin. That's why I said that. Because Kevin looked at me like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah, I was like, what?
But talking about building a Soviet America and only talking about working class, only the industrial workers, even if, hell, maybe that even sounds good. Sounds great even. But I think that a lot of people would not have heard it. In fact, I think a lot of people didn't hear it until after. Up until the point where the communists started trying to more consciously utilize the legacy of and the promise of the American Revolution. And I guess that's why we're here. So we're talking about.
It's the only movement. It's the only trick that has ever worked for any any moment in the history of this country that has seen the development of the expansion of democratic rights and equality and freedom has been hung on the mantle of the promise of the American Revolution. I don't know if that enters into like an analysis of the character of the revolution itself, though. I mean, to my mind, it just kind of seems like, well, they won and shaped society and the values inherent in that society. And so, yeah, if you want to fucking like move people, you move them with the values that currently exist. So like, I don't know if that necessarily speaks to the, like, I don't know, the composition and trajectory and intentions of the revolution itself.
Hey, it's Chris, just dropping in to remind you that we have a Patreon. And for just $5 a month, you can get 2 bonus episodes as well as 2 geopolitics episodes. We also have a Discord that you get access to if you join our Patreon. In the Discord, we have all kinds of channels for discussions of different topics, as well as the channel where we plan and organize our reading groups. And if you'd like to join in our reading groups, please join our Patreon. Lastly, we have a merch store. A new and improved merch store, in fact. We just switched over to a new printer who is not some low-quality drop-shipping company, but is a well-respected, excellent screen printing merch company from Chicago called Anchorfish Printing, who uses a better quality printing process on better quality shirts, is cheaper, and has better shipping options. So please, head on over to our merch store and get one of our shirts. We have 2 designs, and with more to come. Okay, back to the show.
I think, ironically or not, the McCarthyite reaction was correct in its understanding of what communists were doing.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, you're not wrong about that.
Insinuating themselves into the fabric of Americanism.
Yeah, very much so.
But the reason they were able to do that to begin with is because there are resonances. It's not like oil and water. Like, there is a pathway in which they can do that, and it's not an outright deception. It's just there might be like a strategic ambiguity, to borrow a phrase, around messaging, but there's also like there are ideological reverberations that cut both ways, and I think that's a major threat. So it has to be like cut off. It has to be explicitly denounced as un-American. I was also thinking about how this CPUSA Americanism, it's on full display in the HUAC show trials. when you have those communists standing up saying, I am an American communist. I am an American citizen. I am, or specifically with Robeson, I am the son of a former slave. Like reclaiming what America, in a very meaningful way, what Americanism is. And it seems like that was almost wholly the blacklist, and the witch hunt was so successful that we wind up with the New Left and all these different ways of saying, well, that didn't work, or it's kind of all a wash. I don't know. Maybe that's a little bit too fast and loose.
I think it's more or less correct, though. Probably. I really like that Robeson quote. I want to read, actually.
Do it.
So, in testifying before HUAC in 1956, Robeson said, because there's all kinds of accusations about being an agent of Soviet infiltration and being a spy and betraying the country and so on. And Robeson says, my father was a slave, and my people died to build this country. And I am going to stay and have a piece of it, just like you.
Right.
And no fascist-minded people will drive me from it. Is that clear? And it's not just that that's more speaking the language that people speak.
Mm-hmm.
It's way more impactful, way more powerful, way more meaningful than just saying, yeah.
Yeah.
If the feds say, oh, you're just trying to destabilize America because you're an agent of the Soviet Union, a certain kind of whatever person on the left would say, yeah, that's right, because I hate America. I agree with Paul Robeson. I think very much like him. The legacy of the American Revolution is such that I have certain inalienable rights, and I believe what we wrote down and what we teach ourselves, what we teach our kids.
Right, and I think
I'm going to stick here, and it's actually you're the one who's countering the promise. You're the one who's un-American, not me.
Right, and I think that the things that people will point to show why America is bad are things that they understand to be wrong precisely because they have grown up with this promised framework that doesn't quite pan out the way that they want it to, right?
Right.
The protesters that are getting 50 years in prison for protesting, right? That is a total breach of our First Amendment rights. And any American, you ask any American, I don't care who they are, they're going to tell you that they hold the idea of freedom of speech, freedom of debate, freedom of expression to be sacred, right? Mm-hmm. Except for some just LARPing Stalinist nerds that won't, right?
Well, and also some, APAC lobbyists.
Yeah,
APAC Nazis.
Yeah, neocons.
Things like the idea of us engaging in a war on Iran, right? Or funding Israel's genocide. Those are things that are supposed to be anathema to the chartering of the United States. Impose a larger country imposing its imperial will on a smaller country is something that we're supposed to be against as Americans. And if you ask most Americans, they'll say, yeah, I'm against that. Mm-hmm. Because there's that cognitive dissonance that exists between Americans' actual foreign policy and its imperial foreign policy and what people think should and shouldn't happen. That's why I think the content of the actual revolution itself does matter. And what actually did happen in the revolution does matter, even more so than just a defense of why we think that it's worth utilizing as a rhetorical tool. No, it's important as a lesson in history.
Yeah, it's important to clarify that this is not just a matter of learning to speak the right language. It's not just about being able to say, well, they speak with this accent, so I'll say that, or they use whatever, they use this term rather than that one. But it's more like there is a believable and legitimate and motivating content embedded within not just the political life right now, but going all the way back to the very beginning.
Well, it's eminent critique. What Chris is talking about goes back to the early days of the American empire. Like Smedley Butler's criticism is coming from what Chris is talking about, or Mark Twain's criticism of, the Filipino American War is coming from, these bedrock sacrosanct values that are being betrayed. So,
or Eugene Debs's idea of socialism.
Yeah. And then back to Robeson, what you read, Jason, is indicative of why so many, fairly liberal or anti-communist, black liberationist scholars and activists up to the present moment still claim him, because everything he said was so true. His affiliation with communism can't mire or taint his legacy, because what he said is so profoundly true. It's too valuable to not claim.
That's very much true. This is maybe not the most important thing in terms of like what agitational propaganda, but I think when I'm talking to my fellow nerds, like right here, I actually think that it's not even the case that this just America had a revolution and that opened up a series of possibilities, because that's definitely true. But it's more like going all the way back to the Reformation, with the tension between, and honestly, you can even date it further back. You want to try to follow me for a minute? The borderlands of the Roman Empire, and then the Germanic barbarians to the north, and then you can find those threads going all the way through the Protestant Reformation, and then through into the English Civil War, and then in the age of colonization, and we have the 7 Years' War, the French and Indian War. By the time you get to the American Revolution, you're like stepping into a long drama that's been kind of playing out, that humanity has been experiencing with a conversation with itself for a very long time. It's actually a big part of what compelled me to try to understand Hegel's understanding of history, because there's a constant working out of the contradictions in society, and they're not, it's not like they just come out of nowhere. They come out of previous contradictions, which have really, really similar parameters. These are echoes of a conversation that, as freedom unfolds, as humanity becomes more aware of itself, and thus freedom becomes more aware of itself, we are going through this constant refining of this conversation. The American Revolution is one of those inflection points, one of those moments in which a lot of the conversation becomes sharpened and clarified and settled, and the terms are laid out anew in much clearer ways, where it's really impossible to go back toward to an older way. Like when Thomas Paine said, "From a small spark kindled in America, a flame has arisen, not to be extinguished." I think that's very, very true, and it's very it's undeniable at this point, because we've talked about how there's this relationship back and forth across the Atlantic between America and France, and how these revolutions kind of inform the way that the population of the world thinks about the concept of the republic, of constitutions, and of revolution itself. I just think it's a very long process that we're just not finished with. And I think, for me anyways, thinking about this in terms of a conversation with ourselves, I don't know, to me this is very clarifying. I don't know if what I said makes any sense at all, but to me this is very clarifying.
Freedom is a constant struggle, someone said.
Yeah. I mean, in order for it to be a conversation, though, there has to be like we can't pretend like there aren't aspects of what it is to be American that aren't reactionary. The far right, I try to keep up with what relatively prominent figures on the far right are talking about and concerned with, and what's going on over there. As events happen, and boy, they are all about, returning to the values of the founding fathers, repealing the 19th Amendment, and recognizing that this country was founded as a white man's republic. And that's very much so a part of what the American Revolution was about, and what it means to be American is these values inhere in a within a people that are unified by some sort of like singular culture and a singular sort of unifying embodiment, which they would assign to being a racial category that also recognizes within that racial category a hierarchy within itself, saying that one gains the right of citizenship and the protections of this white man's republic, but one doesn't gain the benefits of true freedom and participation in governance without being landowning, earning that seat at the table. This is all, this is what the founders intended. And despite their rhetoric to the contrary of all men are created equal, and we hold these truths to be self-evident, they set up to enshrine that ideal. They set up a rather, from the contemporary perspective, a rather narrowly defined public. And I don't know. I mean, for whatever progress was made and that we want to try to adhere to, we have to be able to navigate a conversation with that reality being the other side of the dialectic that we're engaged in.
Absolutely.
I think it's worth actually discussing what we mean when we talk about the content of the revolution and the radical forces that played such a major part in it. Because everybody knows that some of the founding fathers were slave owners, and some of the founding fathers were anti-egalitarian, and they did, like as Kevin said, set up a system that they wanted to see perpetuate itself, and it ended up being exclusive to white male landowners. But that is not what all of them wanted, and I think it's worth pointing out some of the currents within the revolution that wanted things to be otherwise, and how things could have gone given this or that contingency in history.
Yeah, like for one, there are always those in the colonies that they thought about the purpose of this whole endeavor was just independence, but otherwise we're going to maintain the basic structure of society. Yeah. That's certainly what you could say about a lot of people. I think maybe George Washington kind of stands in for a whole kind of early American revolutionary figure.
Washington, who's the whole time speculating on land past the borders, the indigenous territory.
Mm-hmm. But it's not the case that when we talked about this other thread, this other current within the Patriot camp, that the people were that their aim is a more democratic and participatory, like social vision that's not just represented by intellectuals like Thomas Paine, although he's maybe the best one.
He's definitely the best example of that camp for sure.
Yeah,
and the most radical of the lettered founding fathers, right? Because I mean, there's an entire current of radical lower class people that were involved in the revolution as well.
Yeah, but also the population of the British colonies in North America were that was the most literate population in the world at the time. Like, this is even not being an unlettered person doesn't, it's not just we're not just talking about the unruly mobs. There are also people like John Jay, who I've said this on other episodes that we've done on our podcast before, but John Jay, who's one of the founding fathers, he's also the first governor of New York, and he sets about trying to abolish slavery immediately, and he does.
Right.
They abolished slavery. I think it's 1783, and I think that the country doesn't even really properly exist formally until like 1780. I feel like I should know this. When is the United States actually recognized as a country? Like, is just a... I better figure this out. Hold on.
I thought France recognized it like straight out of the gate.
With Thomas Paine, common sense is...
It was absolutely fundamental to the American Revolution. It was a text that went around and inspired people. That was in the minds of everyone who was writing anything in America at the time of the Revolutionary War. You could even say that Thomas Paine was a sort of Marx to Benjamin Franklin's Lenin. The theorist and the practitioner.
Right.
So the U.S. was formally established, like recognized in 1781. So, recognized in 1783 in its kind of more current form. I have all these dates mixed up, but the point is that the 18th century, long time ago. That's what I mean.
What I was going to say about Paine, though, is that like common sense is full of, he names names, he calls things out very concretely, but it's also full of this open-endedness, this utopian breadth of life that's very like Rousseauian, that it's like getting so far beyond the epoch, like the horizon is so vast, and the kind of society he's inviting people to collectively envision is a fundamentally different world. And I just think that, that is part of the American Revolution. That's part of what makes it happen, is that horizon, that opening of the horizon.
Right. And it's not even just, it's not even only a distant future possibility. Like this Jacobin article, that class struggle was always a part of the American Revolution, I think is a really good one in making the case of like, there was never a moment where there was not a social content to the revolutionary upsurge. And I don't just mean from the founding of the Continental Congress and the formal like war for independence, like going like all throughout the 1760s in all of let's call it the pre-revolutionary situation. There was never a moment where there was like a broad consensus about one day maybe we can get to these more social demands that the poor, that the laboring classes have. But right now we just need independence. That's we kind of read that onto the past. We kind of project that backwards onto the past. At the time, it's a constant social ferment is what creates not just the revolution, although that's very important, but also it's a constant social ferment that creates the very republic itself, because getting independence didn't automatically mean a republic. That was actually, we had to duke that out. We had to go through different kinds of legal frameworks before we ended up with the Constitution. We had to go through a series of class conflicts, pretty severe ones, before we ended up with the Bill of Rights. Like, because the social content to the revolution is not added on, and it's not an afterthought. It's like one of the two pillars.
Right. And like there is an ethos of care for the poor that exists even in the mainstream of the American Revolution. And that is a very sort of like charity-centered one. Like, you as the rich, you should definitely donate through your churches or whatever to help the poor and whatnot. And this is in pre-industrial society, right? Industrial society is just starting to be born. And I think that like there are people like Thomas Paine specifically who take the idea of economic justice for the lower classes to the furthest extent theorizable at the time, I think. I guess there are probably other like radical proto-socialists at the time that I just don't know about, maybe. But like I see that in Thomas Paine, and he was very much so like a mainstream part of the American Revolution. He was like the theorist of the American Revolution.
And this article you referenced by Tom Cutterham, Jason, is such an essential and necessary vantage point into what Kevin was talking about, because Kevin makes a valid point that the sort of revanchist, white supremacist claims on an origin of the American Revolution, there's some validity there, but the sort of what was consecrated by the founding fathers was the result of a contest. It was always contested, and it bears mentioning that not everyone was represented in the room by the founding fathers, right? Like even the good ones, the quote unquote good, like John Adams didn't own slaves, right? But he's hardly a radical in the sense of he wasn't wholly on board with some of the more Republican aims throughout,
Right. He sold out the French Revolution.
Yeah.
He reneged on paying France back its debts because he said, "Oh, the money that we owed was to the crown, not the revolutionary French state, like our brother state in a Republican revolution also is fighting a war with the British, etc."
Would that Haiti could have done the same thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, right. On the subject of contradictory and even criminal excesses, aberrations on the part of the revolutionary figures that we're talking about, I will always think of Bonaparte's conduct and treatment of Haiti as one of the great horrible injustices. And all of history could have been different if whatever. So very much, I guess what we're talking about is just how contradictory everything is, because everything is contradiction. So on the one hand, I feel like that's a very, very simple case to make. We've already said that. Do we need to say that again? I think the answer is yes.
Right.
I mean, we need to say that constantly, because I think that very few of us actually understand it. Even those of us who say that don't actually really get it, I think.
Right.
Yeah,
it's also worth pointing out too, like that these articles that we read make the case that like there was an organized working class, like within the workshops of the in the northern states, that were some of the most radical elements of the revolution, and who actually took things out ahead of where the founding fathers were ready to go at the time. Like, I mean, it was the workshop workers in Boston that took over Boston, right? And, wrested it from the hands of the British, and the Continental Congress had to get out ahead of this rebellion that was already happening before they were ready for it to happen.
Cutterham emphasizes that this was on both sides of the Atlantic, not only the colonies, but in Britain. And
in Britain itself.
And there's sympathetic, there's an ethos that reaches across from both shore.
Yeah. And and it was, I think we pointed this out in one of our previous episodes, that the first person killed in the Patriot cause was Crispus Attucks during the Boston Massacre, who was a free black man. And he wasn't just like walking back from the grocery store and got shot by the British. No, he was part of the radical mob that was throwing rocks at the British soldiers. The first person to die in the cause of freedom in the United States was a black man. And I think that is lost on people who generally tend to see people of color in the United States as pure victims, and never having agency in carrying out like the radical project that was the American Revolution.
On the subject of taking this notion that class struggle was a crucial part of the American Revolution, I think it's also the case that these two different conceptions of the patriot cause, whether there was the conservative one that's like the independence, but otherwise we want to keep the same basic structure, because really the problem is that the king is getting in the way of us expanding westward, and taxing us too
right.
much. Or on the other hand, the more plebeian, working class, democratic and participatory social vision.
Right.
These two currents, they're still flowing through the United States today. They have been the whole time. And so like, it's actually the interaction between these two fundamental visions of America that is the story of America. Like that's in the Civil War, in the rise of the movement of the suffragettes, the rise of the populist, and then the industrial union movement and the socialist movement, the CIO, the civil rights era. All of this is about which of the two authentic and legitimate interpretations of the patriot cause are we trying to uphold? Because maybe the best person that can kind of stand as a representative of both would be Thomas Jefferson.
Right.
Jefferson, who is the slave owner, who's writing about the need to abolish slavery.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Benjamin Franklin, who did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
right. And
free
then
his slaves and then became an abolitionist.
And then Washington, who's like, I'll say it in my will once I die.
And while he's alive, he is the author of the first Fugitive Slave Act.
Yeah.
So he's both the architect of victory in a very literal sense. He's like the Trotsky of the American War for Independence.
Right.
And he plays this legal role, which as president, well, first of all, as the guy who's willing to step down and rather than retain power, he sets a really fantastic precedent. It's quite advanced from the Lord Protector role that Cromwell played in the English Revolution.
Yeah. Did you guys see the preview for the new like kind of chud fest movie Young Washington? There's a new
yeah. I'm gonna watch it though.
I'm gonna watch it too, but it looks super ham-fisted.
Yeah.
So I wanted to make a point, like the dismissive way that leftists talk about the American Revolution. Oh, it was just because people didn't want to pay their taxes, and I'm like, yeah, fucking so. you like paying taxes to a government that doesn't represent you to do things that you don't want it to do. Like the idea that the 13 colonies didn't want to be taxed without having representation in Parliament is a very reasonable and a very reasonable demand that if you think about it is quite radical. And the reason why they even had such a demand is because there was a precedent for this to happen in the Magna Carta and in the English Civil War. The idea that if you were going to be a subject of the crown, you needed democratic representation in the body that governed it. And to me, I don't think that it doesn't make any sense to just blow that off as just like, oh, they just didn't want to pay their taxes, which is, of course, a very fucking liberal thing to say. That's the criticism that liberals level at conservatives is like, oh, you don't want to be part of this society. You just don't want to pay your taxes because all you care about is yourself. Whereas we needed to build roads and whatever. It's
liberal anachronism. It's like taxation that is a pure extraction being returned to the crown. That's not you're not getting the benefits. It's not like being redistributed on your behalf. And also
the crown's not building roads in the in the colonies and
also the economic,
whatever else.
The economic straits of colonists is not exactly the same. Like taxation, there's a burden of taxation that we don't really fathom. When you can't have certain household items because of you being so heavily taxed. The thing I was thinking about earlier, Jason, is I think Mike Duncan references this framework of like distinguishing. There's a fusion or entanglement of two distinct formations of revolution, one being the political revolution and one being social. And so those are kind of interesting ways of thinking about the, I think Paine and Jefferson their vision is beyond mere political revolution. It's
very much
it
so.
envisions a new social order. In that respect, Adams is the conservative, the great conservative.
Yeah. Well, but he was against slavery, though.
Exactly. So it's like that's another contradiction, right? Like, is he what's more, obviously it's not egalitarian to be pro-slavery, but neither is it to be anti-republican, or to kind of see the basic seat of society that makes sure that there's order in an aristocracy being maintained. And the demonized Jefferson wanted to undo that aristocracy.
Yeah. Well, we all know who the real good guy of the American Revolution was, and that is Alexander Hamilton.
Oh,
because they wouldn't have made that cool play with all the raps in it if it wasn't for him, right?
I still haven't seen it.
Neither have I.
I couldn't bring myself to watch it.
I've heard pieces of it.
I've not. Do you know what the angle they take on Hamilton is? Like, what is
how do they make him not a fucking reactionary?
he's an arch fucking reactionary. Like the actual human, the historical figure was an arch reactionary, staunch elitist, anti-democrat, who was in favor of concentrating wealth and power as much as possible because he hated regular people. So, and he wasn't. Like there's not like another side of that. It's not like he was but he believed in that, but also wanted women and people of color to be part of it too, or something like that. You know, he was just right there along with the rest of them. Do you know what angle Lin-Manuel Miranda takes on Hamilton to try to like pretend like he's this wonderful, great guy or whatever?
He cribs the Ron Chernow biography. The origin story I have seen is that he bought it at the airport and started reading it, and just gave birth to this great idea. And I think part of the interest is like his humble origins, his ambiguous ethnicity, and sort of like, his conduct during the revolution he was kind of like some people's idea of Robespierre.
Yeah, his opponents within. I mean, he was committed to the American project. His opponents within the revolution, the American Revolutionary moment, would cast him as a monarchist. But I think that would be an unfair, polemical treatment of him. The reality was he was very committed to the American project, so he wasn't a monarchist. But within the American project, he was as much of a in that direction as you could possibly go.
Wasn't he the?
What do you mean about his ethnicity, Ben?
I remember hearing that there was some dubious lineage. There was some lineage that was unknown about his
one drop.
Yeah.
Well, he was like half French, half English.
There you go. There's his dubious ethnicity.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't feel good about having said dubious ethnicity. By the way.
Yeah.
Well, so
that is dubious.
Ben, our resident race scientist.
Well, I mean, he's only racist against the French, though.
Yeah. Well, Norse ceremonies really bring out my.
I do know that Alexander Hamilton was born out of wedlock, so that makes his in the 18th century English culture. That's questionable.
Christian
origin, whatever.
Highly.
Christian Parenti wrote a kind of like left perspective of Hamilton after the Hamilton craze, which I never read, which I'm kind of curious about.
He was an abolitionist in later life. I know that. That's okay. That's probably like that's the only thing that matters to liberals, by the way. That's all he needed to do. He could have been an absolute utter shithead elitist that believed all poor people were total fucking scum, but he was an abolitionist.
Yeah, liberals were the first Afro pessimists. I was thinking though, wasn't he like the architect of the banking system, like in some political
that was
way?
the whole thing. Yeah.
Which probably should be credited with sort of the enduring nature of the project, but also
I mean he was absolutely right in many of his practical policy positions that the U.S. needed a central authority and a central government and a central banking system.
Yeah. For sure.
And fuck all this, anti-centralism,
Yeah.
For sure.
Honestly, an honest rendering of him is not even. We'll recognize that he was recognizing the need for central authority and central banking. Really, is the reality of his posture, and that's why his opponents cast him as like a monarchist. Is because he was against this total radical decentralism.
I mean, we can imagine what would have become of a Jeffersonian democracy. So soon after
the Confederacy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, but Jefferson had this sort of egalitarian idea about like small landowners, like the yeoman farmer, right?
Yeah.
But of course, what would have happened is those yeoman farmers would have eventually like accumulate land and become plantation owners, right?
Right.
Or they would have lost their land to speculators and whatever.
There's
especially
also,
if Hamilton had anything to say, the banks would be powerful enough to buy up all the land.
well, that's the true abolitionist,
Yeah.
No, sorry. But also the Jeffersonian ideal depends upon free land, right? It depends upon westward expansion.
Dispossessing
free real estate.
Yeah.
Dispossessing the natives of their land. Exactly. Yeah. And that is the pressure valve that has always kept class forces from boiling over in the United States is free land.
Yep.
Interestingly enough, now that's just about the least attainable thing for most Americans at this point is actually owning a piece of land.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting watching there is no more outward expansion left. Maybe that's the compulsion of the contemporary moment that we're in now, of the future that the tech world seems to constantly be trying to innovate is new frontiers, new free real estate. They're constantly trying to create a metaverse or travel to creating colonies on Mars or whatever else. Like every innovation is this new impulse toward a new frontier that creates a massive, incalculable field of new free real estate. Because maybe that is what I don't know. I'm sort of on the fly, sort of postulating this, but it seems like that we're in this moment where there is nowhere else, no new frontier. There is nowhere else to go. There is no more free real estate anywhere in the world, and the contradictions of capitalism there's nowhere else for it to turn. There's this historic pressure release valve doesn't exist anymore. And so it's kind of like trying to create a new one.
That's Rosa Luxemburg's principal contention about the expansion of capital across the globe, that like at a certain point it's going to have to either die or eat itself, and like so that's what a virus does.
Yeah.
Рабочие и крестьяне не смогут прожить без нас. Без нас некому будет установить порядок, определить работу, принудить к труду. Без нас все развалится и государство распадется.